Hello, everyone, and welcome to the very first episode of Science Tori, where we share stories from the world of science and academia to inspire the younger generation. My name is Seun Jimo, and today I'd like to talk about an idea that many young people grow up believing. This idea that career paths have to be linear. You want to become an engineer, so you join science class in high school, get into an engineering program in the university, you graduate, land an engineering job, and live happily ever after. Well, that certainly is the case for some people, but for others, and I dare say the majority of people, the road is rather windy and bendy. Very complex and uncertain with many twists and turns. And this was certainly my experience. And today, I'd like to share my bendy career story and 6 lessons you would find useful on your career journey. So like you, I started off with big dreams of becoming an engineer. So naturally, I chose the science route in high school. I got admitted into systems engineering at the University of Lagos in Nigeria. Greatest Akokite, yeah. Please give me a shout out in the comment section if you are an Akokite. So I loved systems engineering because unlike other engineering disciplines, it was a more holistic sense of engineering problems. It made you understand how different elements come together to make a system function. So as a result, we did a lot of mathematical modeling, we did simulations. We also explored very cutting-edge topics like robotics, artificial intelligence, image processing, climate change, a lot of topics which are very crucial to humanity in this day and time. At this point, I would like to pay tribute to Professor V.O.S. Oluloyo, who was the visionary behind the Department of Systems Engineering in the University of Lagos. Your seats, sir, have produced very outstanding individuals who are doing great things in different parts of the world. We're making you proud. May your soul continue to rest in perfect peace. So back to my story. After graduation, I did my National Youth Service and I was thrown into the wild of the job market, very full of hope. I'd graduated with a 2-1 from a reputable institution in Nigeria, so I thought this was good enough to earn me a job. But reality hit very fast. I went through several assessment centers with major oil companies and manufacturing and consulting firms. Always came close to landing a job, but it just never happened for me. I always kept getting close to the last interview stage, and there'll be one story or the other. But what was interesting was that the banking industry was hiring at the time in mass. So I was out of a job for a couple of months. I thought, let me take my chances with the banking industry. So I applied and I got accepted to work in First Bank. Now, I had zero interest of working in the banking sector. My dream had always been to become an engineer. But my dad kept drumming this message in my ear. My son, a bird in hand is better than 5 in the bush, meaning that I had to take the opportunities right before me. So I took the banking job. And this brings me to my very first lesson for young people. You need to be flexible and practical about your career prospects. What you would find is that the environment around you goes a long way in determining your career prospects. So at the time I was job hunting in the southern part of Nigeria, militancy was on the rise. Job opportunities were shrinking in the sectors that I desired at the time. Oil and gas firms, a lot of them were shipping out to Lagos. So opportunities were shrinking. So eventually I took the opportunity at the bank, but what started as a temporary stopgap turned into 7 years in the banking industry, an industry I had no interest in. So I moved around in banking, went from operations to marketing, because at the time we found out that all the marketers were getting all the recognition and all the promotion. So I made that pivot at some point during my career. Then things started getting quite repetitive. It wasn't really fun going into the market to seek business opportunities because the economy was in decline. So this is when I started thinking seriously about going back to school. And this leads me to my second lesson. Don't be afraid to upskill or reskill. I was in my 30s at the time, and some might say it was too late for me to go back to school. All my peers, a lot of them had done their masters at the time. But I saw the handwriting on the wall of the Nigerian economy. I was working in marketing, I was dealing with a lot of businesses, and it was really hard for businesses at the time. So I knew that this was the right time for me to japa from Nigeria, if you understand Nigerian lingo. So I started looking for master's programs abroad. And to be honest, I can't tell you the accurate story of how I landed on logistics and supply chain management as a choice of a master's program. But what I can tell you is that my dad works in logistics and shipping. And as a young child, I worked with my dad, going to the ports to clear goods, containers for different clients. And I didn't exactly like the job, to be honest. My dad wanted me to take over the family business.
You're the one.
But it wasn't the prettiest and sexiest career, to be honest. I just did not like it. But somehow I had come full circle with this choice about doing logistics and supply chain management as a master's degree. I spoke with friends in the industry, I did some research, and I found a good program in the UK that matched my interest and, most importantly, my budget. So I pulled together some of my savings, I got support from my family members. Shout out to my parents and siblings who made this dream a reality. Before you know it, I was off to study logistics and supply chain in a top business school in the United Kingdom. At the time, I didn't fully understand how the UK higher education system worked, but I knew that I wanted a school with a reputable supply chain management program. So I checked the rankings and focused on those with strong research reputation. Which brings me to lesson 3. At the time you're thinking about education, go for the best educational institution that your money can afford. Later on in my career, I came to understand the importance of metrics like research power, which affects your career prospects if you're moving into an academic career post your postgraduate degree. Universities like the University of Nottingham, Cambridge, Oxford, etc., they belong to a group of elite universities known as the Russell Group. They do a lot of cutting-edge research that attract funding from government institutions, and it makes an excellent environment for academic excellence. So in another video, I would go into greater depth about the UK higher education system and also Russell Group universities, especially for those who are thinking about postgraduate studies in the United Kingdom. So once I started my program, my aim was to graduate with a distinction, like most international students. I believe this was the easiest way to distinguish myself in a crowded job marketplace. But I came to understand very quickly that it wasn't a guarantee that you get a job, because in the UK, experience tends to count more than your certificates. Okay, so this is when I started thinking about my dissertation, and which brings me to lesson 4. If you're thinking about an academic career, your dissertation can be an inroad. Because I had no experience in supply chain management, it was difficult for me to find a topic for my dissertation. So what I did at the time was I booked appointments with various academics, asking them about what they were doing in terms of their research. And one supervisor introduced me to the topic of 3D printing, something you may have been introduced to. So I discovered the disruptive potential of 3D printing and the amazing things that you could do with it in terms of operations. So I decided to explore it as a topic for my dissertation. So I developed a good relationship with my supervisor. I dug deep into the topic, did a very strong literature review, and I was able to develop a conceptual framework from what had been published, a strategic framework for deploying 3D printing in industrial operations. This dissertation was very fundamental to my graduation with a distinction in my master's program. And it was very crucial in the coming years for my academic career, as I'll talk about in the last section of the video. So after I finished my master's program, I went back into the job market, but this time as an immigrant in a foreign country. And trust me, it was a whole different ball game. And this is a good time to talk about lesson 5. Don't put all your career eggs in one basket. At the time, it was really difficult to get a job. Lots of employers don't sponsor visas. So landing a supply chain management role without experience was very difficult. I wasn't really interested in doing a graduate program because I was a mature student at the time. I wanted to go in with some experience and grow up the ranks in that fashion, but that did not work out. So at the time, I thought about starting a business, an idea that I'd been developing for some time. So I applied for the graduate entrepreneurship program at the University of Nottingham. This gave me time to develop the idea while I was working on the side. But as you know, startups can be very risky. This is when I started thinking about revisiting the idea of doing a PhD, which had failed sometime during the master's program. I had tried to apply and I didn't get through. Now, this is where my master's dissertation became very crucial. I was able to revisit my master's dissertation and expand that idea with my supervisor into a PhD proposal. Now, this brings me to my last lesson and very important one. When it comes to careers, relationships are everything. So my supervisor knew I was serious, I was motivated, he liked my work ethic. So he put in the effort to support my PhD application. He reviewed my drafts, we did mock presentations for the interview, scholarships, and also the PhD offer. And I was successful. I got not just one scholarship, but 2 scholarships. I got the Vice Chancellor's Research Excellence Scholarship and also the Nottingham University Business School scholarships. Without these scholarships, trust me, I would not have done a PhD because, as you know, it's a very expensive program. So these scholarships enabled me to do my PhD without working. One of the scholarships paid me a monthly stipend, which meant that I could focus 100% on my PhD and not worry about work. A lot of my colleagues had to do some work on the side, which can be very challenging because the PhD itself is a very difficult journey. So I'll talk about my PhD experience in another video, but for now, I'll just like to anchor the points that I have made about careers not being a straight line in most of the cases that you would find, especially in this day and time that we live in. Mine was very bendy. I found myself from engineering going into banking, coming back into supply chain, then going back into academia. So that is a very bendy career path. I never envisioned that would be how things would play out, but lo and behold, the realities of the job market hit me, and that was my experience. So if you're an early career professional and things are not going according to your plan, there's nothing strange about this. And in fact, I believe that in this disruptive age of technology and AI, there is going to be need for you to be flexible in your career journey, to be able to adapt to different circumstances. So don't grow up thinking, I studied engineering, so I'll be an engineer till I die. Think about being flexible as the first lesson. Don't be afraid to upskill and reskill as the times demand. Choose the best institutions you can afford. If you're thinking about an academic career, think seriously about your dissertation. Think strategically about your supervisors. I'll talk about that in another video coming up shortly. Don't put all your career eggs in one basket. Be flexible. And lastly, relationships matter. Build relationships, build networks. This applies whether you have an academic career or a professional career in every industry. Okay, so I hope this was helpful. Thank you so much for tuning in to Science Tori today. If this inspired or helped you in any way, I would like you to share and subscribe and drop some comments in the section, telling me about your bendy career stories, where you are currently in your career, the challenges you're facing, and perhaps some of the topics that you want me to touch on in upcoming episodes. In an upcoming episode, I'll talk about my PhD journey, applying for scholarships, the UK higher education system for people who are considering academic careers in this country. Okay, so stay tuned to this channel, like and share, and I'll see you on the next episode. So until next time, it's Seun Jimo signing out from Science Tori, where we break the science behind the stories. Peace out. Thank you.